Hi and welcome back. This is Simone from Biim.Games, and today we'll see an introduction to functions. Functions are an essential part of a program. Until now we haven't used them because we have studied more basic things, but since this is our fourth episode, we really have to start to look into them. With the functions, we aren't only able to write a part of the code separated to the main program part, and therefore we can go to work only on that specific part without messing up the rest of the code, but we can use them to avoid to rewrite the same code. In this way, since we can call the same functions from several points of our code, we avoid to repeat the same commands over and over in our program all the time. It might be hard to understand the concept with just a verbal explanation, but once we start to write our code, you will get the concept straight away. So just bear with me. I have already opened Construct 2 with this project, empty one. I just have a layout with a fixed area of 854 pixels by 480. Just any size is fine just for this tutorial. So I don't have any extra dimension outside the current project view. That's it. If you have seen in my previous video, this one, Let's Play and Code, is the new series we are doing now, and Spell Sword Cards Dungeontop, this is the new video. This is what we are getting inspiration from. So we get inspiration from this game for try to recover some mechanics, and we use them for our game. And in this today's tutorial, we will learn how to create a deck of cards and take some of these cards in our hand. All of this thanks to these functions we're going to study today. Okay, just make this down. First of all, I'm going to rename this layout. I will call it board. So it's the table where we're going to put our cards at the deck. Then I create a new layout, add layout. I don't create the event sheet because this is just, I will call it sprites. This is just for us to store the sprites that we don't want to see at the beginning of the game, but we want anyway to have in the memory of a Construct 2, so it's easy to load all the project. Also, we have to put some sprites here initially if we don't put on the board. Okay, so here will be just our cards. I can start to create now. Insert new object and write card. Okay, I already created with my high art skill some cards. Then you can just import. As you can see, very beautiful art. Just to have an idea what are these cards. That's it. Okay, so we can close this. Sorry, we need to be careful with the animation, speed 0, otherwise they will loop until the end. We'll play the animation and we don't want this. And we can close this one. This is some leftover from before, I don't know. Okay, so next, so we have our card. Each one of these cards, at the frame 0, we have the image number 1, it's 0, frame 1, image number 1, and so on. So when we're going to use the card, now we know which card are based on the index of the frame of the animation. As usual, I'm explaining this in a way that people that doesn't have the full version of Construct 2 or 3 can follow, because with the cards we can do in a different way, like we can have a family where each sprite is part of the family and then can be managed in different way. So now we have, as I said before, just one image, and each frame is representing a different card. So even if you don't have the family because you're using the free version, you can still follow this tutorial. Okay, another thing to do is that I'm going to rename this event sheet in ES board. So we remember that this is connected to this layout, and then the layout sprites. At the moment we don't need anymore, so I can just close to make it clear where are we going to work. Okay, so we don't confuse one with the other. Okay, for the next step we want to create our deck. So we check the dimension of the card, because I don't remember. It's 80 by 120, so we can do 100 by 160. I think should be fine. Deck, and then 100 by 160. Color should something like, yeah, I mean this is quite good. Let's check if the origin is in the middle. That's okay for us. And yeah, that's quite good for now. So now we go on the event sheet. So now we're going to create a new event. Add event, and they say system on start of the layout. And then we want to call the function at the start of the layout. So we go on the action, add action. Problem is that the function is not part of the system, but is a plugin that is like always works in Construct 2. You need to load the plugin, so you need to load the plugin to be able to use the function. So we just cancel, and then from here insert a new object, plugin, function. And now you will be able to see that we have among the actions the option to use a function. And then we have 3 different kind of shoes that we can do with the function: call expression, call function, and set return value. For now we just start to call function. We'll see the other 2 things in the next videos. Call function, and then how we want to call this function here. So we call it create deck. When you create a function, you give a name. You can actually have a space if you want. You don't need to have an underscore or have everything together. So just keep in mind, it's not like a variable or a constant where they need to be connected in somehow, or the character. You can use a space if you want. If it's make it easier for you to understand that it's a function rather than a variable, whatever. I like to have a space, so for me it's more clear compared to a variable where you don't have any space. But as usual, it's your options. Okay, so what's happening now is the normal cycle of the program as usual starts from the first line and goes down and follow all the instructions. But when we have a function, and the program come here, read this event, in this case on start of layout, then goes to check the action. The action is a function. The function is go, in literally what it means, go to do this create deck. That is the name of the index, let's say. The create deck is maybe here, so the program jumps here, do whatever it has to do inside the function, then it goes back to this point and continue the normal cycle of the program. So that's why functions are interesting, because it let you jump to another part of the program, or even another event sheet that you have included that maybe we'll see later as well. And then you go back here after all the things are done. So that's one important thing that the function are, and we'll see now how we go to operate this. So we do add event function on function, and then we type here create deck. So whatever is happening here, after finish, it will go back here. Okay, now we need to do something to create this actual deck. So I'm going to create with B, I add the sub event, and I'm going to create a loop, because we want to create this deck in a sequence. So we create the first card, second card, and so on, and we start from the bottom here. We put one card and another one, and so on, until we have all of our 10 cards on the deck. So first things first, system, and make a for loop, for, and then don't need to call a loop in any way this time because it's just a simple thing. Sometimes you have many loops, one inside the other, and you need to operate with the index of the loop index. So it's better if you give a name. In this case, it's very simple, so I'm not going to do it. But normally, if you have a chance, do it because your game might become more complicated. So we loop from start index to end index. Start index, we use the 0 because our card start from frame 0, so it's easier to do the matching, and finish at 9. So from 0 to 9, included 0 and included 9. What are we going to do? Add action, and I call deck. Spawn another object. So the deck create a new object, and which object are you going to create? Of course, is a card. Layer 0, image point 0, it's fine. Then the second action is to choose the card and set animation, set frame to loop index. I'm just going to write everything now, and after I will explain step by step. After this one, for the card, we set the height of the card. So we're going to y, set y, and it's equals to self dot y, this current y of the card, minus loop index times 10. I think it's enough. Okay, let's explain what are we doing here. So when we call this function here, the function does this loop from 0 to 9. With the first value, we have a 0 on the loop. So the deck spawn a card on top itself because image point 0. The card is as a center in the middle with the origin point. Same the deck. Then, since this is happening many times, but we are just have a flow of information that are related to this order. So the deck spawn the first card here, and then any reference that we have now about cards is related to the card that we just spawned, not any other cards we have. So since we just spawned this card here, we give the information about this card, and this card we say set the animation frame equals to the loop index. That is this for we are doing here. So at the moment the for is 0, it means that the animation frame of the card is number 0. Therefore, the animation frame card 0 is this one, and the image we can see is this one with the number 0. That's why I left all in order before. The second thing, still referring to the card just spawned, we set the y equals to the current y, that is the same position of the deck because the card has spawned on the deck. So if the deck is, let's check, you can see. Now the deck is position, let's make it 350 round number. Okay, now the deck's position 350. So the card is spawned at y equals to 350 minus what? The loop index value that now is currently 0 times 10, and this become 0. So 350 minus 0 still 350. We're doing this because with the next loop, the value of the loop index become 1. So we create a new card with the animation frame 1, therefore the image is the number 1. And here the value is different of the y because it's 350 minus what? Loop index that is 1 minus 10 equals 10. So 350 minus 10 become 340. Therefore, the first card is spawned here, and the second card is spawned 10 pixels above. And so on. And we keep doing this because this loop index increase, so the y will always increase. And that is as well the frame always increase. So we will have as a result all our card here. Now what we can do, we just save, because always remember to save, guys and girls, because sometimes we mess up things or blackout or whatever. And then we try and we see if we are right. As you can see, we have our deck, that is the base of the deck, and here we have all the cards. Now you can't see the value of this card because they are one on top of each other, but if I go on our program here and to the card, I add the behavior, drag and drop. Okay, is initial state enable, and then I do it again. Now we can see that 9, then we have 8. See, as I move the card, it's always 7. So they have been spawned in order as we planned. So the first card was 0, then the 10 pixels above 1, 20 pixels above of the deck is 2, and so on. So that's quite good result. It was quite easy calling the function and using the loop. Now go back to our program here. Let's save again, just in case. Now next thing we want to do is to take the cards from the deck and put in our hand. To do this, we need to have some slot that represent how many cards we can put in our hand. Okay, let's first of all move this a little bit lower, I think, and here we can be 80 maybe. So make space for all the other cards, and then we create a new object, sprite, and we call it slot. We do the same size of the deck. If I'm not wrong, was 100 by 160, and we give maybe some like light gray color. Should be okay with 100 160. Yes, I'm going to move the card here. So what we want to give to this deck to identify one from each other, to this slot, we give some instance variable. I'm going to create all the instance variable first, and after I duplicate the slot to be able to have one for each card we can hold. So instance variable, first one we give n, so just to identify which slot are we talking about, so slot number. I leave to 0, of course numeric variable, and the second variable, it will be card, and we'll put to -1. This will help us to understand which card is on the slot. Well, we'll see in a minute. Okay, so now we are going to duplicate the slot as we did in the past. Hold the Control, left click with the mouse and drag it, and you can have duplicated of the same sprite. Now we want to align this slot, all these slots, to the deck so it looks better. Just to show you something that you can learn, select all of them. As you can see, if I click 1 by 1, the Y is 368, 366, 367, 360. So it's not always the same height. We want all at the same height. Select all of them, go on the right side of the comma, so we are going to modify all the Y. Since now it doesn't show any value because we select multiple images. So if I type 370, boom, they go all at the same height. Now we want to have a nice distance from the deck, a little bit, and then put them at the same distance between each other. So since the slot and the deck are wide, 160 pixels, and the half is 80 plus another half of the magia, still go 160. We want to have at least, let's say, 20 pixel distance. So we're going to have increase the position of the X of the first slot to number that let us increase by 120 each time. So let's say we start to 220, little bit away from the deck. Then we're going to increase the value of the other slot by the size of the width of the slot itself, plus there is 100 plus 20, I would say, so become 120 more. So if this is 220 plus 120 becomes 340, and we go to put 340 for this card. Okay, and then the next one become 340 plus 120 is 460. 460, and then the next one has to be 580. 580. And finally the last one has to be 120 more, so it becomes 700. Okay. Now they are all aligned with the height, and they are the same distance between them. Of course, we leave a little bit gap from the deck. I could leave a little bit more, but for now it's just one example, just to show you. Of course, you can do as you want. Another thing you can do now, they're not doing because first for the time, second because we have a limited number of instruction if you're using the free version of construct. You can create these, you can spawn actually these slots in the same way that we spawned the card before. So this is very useful because if you have, for example, the game on the mobile, they need to adapt for different sides of the screen. Then you can calculate how much is wide the screen, and therefore decide how much is has to be distance one card from another card, or in this case a slot. So for now it's fine in this way. Let's move on. So we check now that each card has the instance variable n equals to 0, because we cloned before from the first one that has 0, of course. So but now we're going to rename this, to assign different value to the card number, slot number, sorry. We give a slot number equals 1, this will be called 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we can identify which slot are we talking about in the code when we're going to do something. At the moment we leave all of them with the instance variable card equals to -1. -1 means that there is no card on the slot, so the slot is empty. When instead we have a different value that is 0 to 9, it means that that value corresponds to the card number that is actually on top. So for example, if I have this card here with a frame 4 on top of the slot number 1, I will have here the card value here as 4. So I know that this slot is containing the card number 4. This for future reference when we see when I'm going to create a new part of the code. So we go on we save, of course, and we go on our event sheet board. So until now we have that our program on start to layout called the function create deck. We have the creation of the cards, and that's it. So we want to have here another call to another function that we call full hand. So this function will just give all the cards to the player until he reaches the maximum number of cards that he or she can hold. So to do this, I will show you a different way from before. Before we create the call to the function and then we create the function. This time I create the function first, and after I put here the call to the function. So function, On function, compare parameter we will see another time, not today, but it's not something useful that we'll see later, don't worry. So on function, full hand, and then we do here function, call function. Now why I'm doing this in this order rather than the previous one? To show you the difference. The difference is that if you create first the full hand and you type here a double quotation mark, then you get a suggestion of the name of the function. So it's useful for two things. One, because when you have a really lots of function and you are so busy in coding complicated stuff, you might forget the exact name of the function you want to refer to. And the second thing, that you might misspell. So if I do this process of calling here create deck, I can type create decks, for example, with s, that is wrong, and then a function is not going to call anything because there is no function called create decks. This here stay in this way, will be a create decks, but it will not work. So in this way I avoided the issue that I can have. So always, if you have the chance, first create the function, then after do the call. So in this case I do the call to full hand because create deck we already have above, and that's done. So now from now my sequence is that when I start the game, first goes to jump to create deck, then goes to full hand. If I would have this order here, it wouldn't matter. Still the computer doesn't go from this instruction to this one because this is number 2, but just jump to number 3 because create deck is here. Now for me, to make it easier to understand, I put this on top, so it's easier to follow the flow of the game, but of course it can be put in anyway, even a different event sheet and with an include. As I said before, we'll see later this function here. So I save as usual. And what are we going to do with full hand? So basically from the deck, when we have full hand, we take the card we put in our slots. Now you have to remember we use the function for a reason. The reason is that this picking up cards from the deck, it's happening many times in the game. So when you play any kind of, not any kind, but most of a card game, often you feel yourself that you need to take more cards from the deck. So sometimes you might have a situation where you have 5 cards and then you use, for example, this third card here, you play it, you don't have anymore this card here, so you need to take a new card. So with this function, what are we going to do? We check in sequence each slot with a loop as we did before, and then we check in the loop, of course the loop we start from 1, we check slot number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and we see if the value of card slot dot card, so instance variable of the slot, is equal to -1. So if it's equals to -1, it means that the slot is empty, as I said before. Therefore, in that case, we take a card and we put on that specific slot. Otherwise, we move on and we check the next slot and so on until all the loop is finished. So this is what we're going to do in this next sequence here. So we go in a full hand here, we make a sub event, and then what are we going to do? We do a check first to see if the slot is empty. I'm going to show you a different way to do the loop from the one before, because it might save time, because in this way we just filter out this slot that we don't need. So the loop will be faster to do. So we go here on add event, we select a slot, and we compare for instance variable. We compare the card. So if the slot has the value card equals to -1, then we consider these slots. So basically, if you have 100 slots, for example, only 10 have a -1, we are going to operate only on these 10, and we're going to do a loop among these 10 rather than a loop among all the 100. So we save time, so the game will be faster. So here I'm going to add another condition. and this time is in the system 4. So as I said before, it's not 4, it's not for each, but it's for each order. So basically for each slot. Order, in which order? You can choose anything here. In this case, I order by the instance variable slot dot number and number in ascending order. So it will be from the lower to the higher one. So now we are going to do this check. So first we filter, as I said before, taking consideration only the cards that are empty, the slots that are empty, and then for each slot that are empty, we check them in ascending order. In this way, basically, when we go with the deck to take the card from the deck and put on the slot, we are sure that we do this action from left to right. So if there are 1 and 2 empty slots, we're going to put the card first on this one and second on this slot here. If we go in, for example, in descending order here, from the higher number to the lower one, then there will be the opposite. So the first card will be put on this slot and the second card on this one. So now you learn something new. Of course, you can do with this 4 here, as I said before, but longer. Anyway, this is also, as usual, a good excuse to show you something that you don't know yet. So what I'm going to do in this function here, basically after filtering all these slots, we call another function, because functions are very cool things that you can do so many crazy things with them. So for example, call another function, or call even themselves in some case. So how are you going to call here? What are we going to call? As usual, I'm not going to do it here because I suggest before, better to create a new function from event first and then we call it. As a save as always now. So we are now going to add the event function, and we call the function is pick card. Okay, and now as usual from here, function, call function pick card. Okay, now always if you can, break down the code in many functions, anyway in general in many isolated parts. This because it's easier to modify only the specific part of the code without messing up other parts, because otherwise it might get very easy to confuse when you go to put hands in some code, that especially after a while. And also it's easier to find bugs because you can just put some information that run like visually. Maybe I'll do a video about this in the future as well, that you have a feedback or maybe some text appearing if something go wrong, and so you know that, okay, you can call this text or on this bug is happening inside this function, then you write the name of the function. Well, we will see later in the future videos. If you are interested, let me know. It would be nice maybe to make a video about finding bugs. Okay, so let's move on. And what I want to do here is we call this pick card, but how do we know which card we pick? Because we have the cards that are already on the deck, plus cards that we have already on our hand. So when we have an empty slot, how does the computer know which card we have to pick? To do this, we need to go to the cards and give an instance variable, and we call it slot. With the default number is a numerical variable. Default value is 0. This because, and now you understand why I start to put this value from 1 and not to 0. This is because if it's 0, it means that the card is on the deck. If it's 1 to 5, it means that the card is assigned to one of these slots. And that's why we did all this. So what do we do at this point inside the pick card? So we're going to filter the cards to pick. In this case, we check if the card has a compare instance variable slot equals to 0. It means that the card is in the deck, otherwise the slot will have a different value, as we said before. Then we do another check. By the way, just open a little bit of a little note. If you have a free version of construct, you might want to put many conditions one inside each other, so all at the same point. You see me that I always, like in this case, put sub event. I do it because for me it's much easier to read the code and filter even visually what's going to happen first. Second thing is that I can see useful things for the debug, or if I have to modify the program. So if you have a free version, I know you have a limited number of events that you can call, depends on the version, if you have construct 2 or 3. But if you don't have this problem. But if you have this problem here, try to compact as much as you can in the same line. So put more than one condition here. In this case, like add another condition, like for example, system, whatever. But if you don't and you want, for me, I said it's very useful. You can use as many sub events as you want if you don't have a limitation, because you know free version. And then in case you need to put hands on the code later on, it's much easier because you don't need to drag things condition down and create another, filtering things again. It's very time consuming. That's why I do in this way. So this just was a small note. Sorry for interrupt, but just it came in my mind because some people might wondering why I'm doing this way. Okay, so how do I know which card to pick? So when we are here, we know, yes, the card has to be on the slot 0, that means in the deck. But how do I know all the cards that are here, which one is the one on top? So I go here and I show you a new condition. So add another condition on the card. And this is something very interesting because I knew about this because I read the manual, I read all of the manual. It's a thing that I suggest everyone to do it at least once. But you get lost with so many functions that construct has, and you might forget it about something that makes your life easier and it's already made, and you try to create the code in a complicated way. So this is something sometimes I forgot it is, but useful. It's this one. Pick nearest or further. With this condition we can say of all these cards that have a slot equals 0 as a value, pick the nearest, so the closest one to this point, in this case 0, 0, or the furthest away. So I want to take the card that is closer, the card is on top of the deck, not the one at the bottom. So what I'm going to do, sorry I close it, I'm going to filter here with this condition. Click the nearest to X. I will use the X of the deck. So deck dot X. And as a Y, I leave 0 because 0 is the highest point on the viewport of the game. So in this way, deck X is this one here, and the Y is at this point. So you're going to filter the cards that are on the deck, and we will take the first one as a second condition that is the closest to the top. That's what are we going to do. So of course you can do this in many different ways. As I said before, sometimes I forgot about this function, so sometimes I might mess up the code and do it in different way. It happened in the past, I'm not doing it anymore now, but I remember something that might happen. You always find a solution coding to do something you want, even if it's not a native way. But if there is something like this, it's just one line of code. It saves your time, so just use it. Now keep filtering here the condition. So add another event, and this time I filter by slot. No, sorry. Slot, compare instance variable, and we have this condition number card. We filter by card because we want to consider only the slot that has no card, so the value has to be -1, as we explained earlier. Then we keep another filtering, so again another sub event. For me, as I said before, I like to put many sub events, one inside each other, and this time we filter again the slot, and we filter the slot, going to pick up as before the nearest to what? To the deck deck.x the deck itself. So I can just put the coordinates of the deck, or today I can spell deck. So just to summary again, when we call this pick card, we need to choose which card we have to pick. The card has to be first of all inside the deck, so the value of slot, or the instance variable slot, has to be 0. Then after all this card, we're going to take the one closest to the top. Then on this one, we need to choose the card to put inside the first empty slot. So in this case, first we need to filter all the slot available, and we take in consideration only the one that are -1. So let's say these two, for example. And then amongst these two, with the next filter, we pick the closest one to deck.x and deck.y, that are the coordinate of the deck, that is this point here in the middle. So which one is the closest one? This one, the one on the left. So first thing that we filter the card, we take this one, we put it here, and then the second card will go inside here. Just to show you what's happening, we'll have the first card going here because this is empty. Second card will go here, third card, and so on. But at one point, when I will have no cards here and no cards here, I have 3 empty slots. I don't know which one to pick. I filter, as I said before, with picking up a slot at the value card -1. Therefore, 1, 2, 3, and then among these 3, I'm going to pick first the one that is closest to the deck. So it will be this one that received the card. Okay, so since this is happening inside the loop of full end, after I take a card, the cycle is repeated because this is happening for each slot that has a value of card -1. So therefore, until I have cards in the deck and until I have cards as slots that are empty, this keep going on. Okay, so at this point we can go to the next step, that is take this card that is on the deck, put it here. I just show from here, so just start again. So take the first card, put it here, and when I put it here, I need to identify the card and say that now this card is connected to the slot. So first thing, we have to change the position of the card. Second thing is to say that the card is on the slot. So the card has to be changed its value, or the card variable slot. And the slot itself need to have a variable that is card variable, identifying which card we have on top. Okay, so after all this talking, let's just type in here so it's easier to maybe understand. So we pick card. So after all the filtering we just talked a couple minutes before, and we say set position to, or I put the coordinate, or I can do easier, set position to another object, and then don't have to filter. As I said before, use the function that already in construct, so you save time and lines of code. So set position to another object. Which object? Slot. Image point 0, it's fine. Now, how do we know which slot the card has to be positioned on top? We know because it's filtered from all these conditions before. In this case, these two. So you don't need to specify anything. Rather than if I use as before, just set position X and 0, I need to put the value. I need to make some sort of calculation to understand which one. So use this shortcut. Then another thing to do, still card. Set a value of the instance variable slot. In this case, I just give as a value slot dot number. So basically, as before, we know already that we're talking about this slot in particular that we just filtered. So this slot in particular has a value in the number, and that this value is copied on the card dot slot. Then next thing to do, same thing with slot. Now we know that the card is connected to the slot, but the slot is not connected to the card yet, so we do the other way around. Set value to the slot. Which one? We give a value of the card. So which card are we talking about? Of course, the one we filter here, and which is the way to identify the card is the animation frame. So just write card dot animation frame, and now the cards and slot are connected. Now another thing I want to do, card, I remove the behavior, I disable, sorry, the behavior drag and drop, because I don't want that the player take the card from the deck without having permission, because maybe it's another player's turn or the action is not possible, so it has to be something automatically going, maybe at the beginning of the turn or whatever. But I want that the player is able to use the card when he or she has on their own end. So at this point I disable by default the behavior drag and drop on the card, but when I go here I enable, set enable drag and drop. And now we're going to save and test. So as you can see here, there are cards and I cannot take them. Okay, now why is not giving the card? I just need to give a little bit of weight here. Wait, maybe give 3 seconds so it's also visually nice to see, and maybe later on we just put down to 1 second to make it faster the development. This just because the time that this function is called, this is called as well, and then run a loop too fast before the cards are organized. So just a technical thing here. So now it should work. And that's it. So now all the cards are organized in order. First one has been taken is number 9 because the closest one to this spot, to the deck. The 8, 7, 6, and so on. I cannot drag this one, but I can drag this because they are on my end, so I can just play these cards where I want in the limit of the game rule. So let's go back again here, and we are going to create a condition that let the player use the cards. Otherwise, if the player doesn't use the cards, we cannot see that the function to pick the card again, or that the full end works when we need again during the game. Because as I said at the beginning, the good thing is this, or the function is that we can call them as many times as we want. We don't need to rewrite the code over and over. Okay, first thing, I'm just going to put down this way to 1 second, so it's faster for us to test the game. And then I just show you again my excellent drawing skill with the mouse. So I create a new sprite that we call it use card Okay, and I'll make it 80 by 80, just doesn't really matter. And then I pick red, more or less, red, and then I pick black, and I'm going to be a big artist, most famous artist on this channel, maybe 4, and I write use. It's quite decent, not too bad. Okay, so what's going to happen? Let's try the game. What you want that the player wants to use these cards, and when the player put the card on use, the card is destroyed, because, like, for example, it's a fireball and you cast the fireball on an enemy, so the card after the explosion on the fireball ends the effect, so it has to be gone. But at the same time, what we want to do is that if the player drag the card and not on the enemy, but for example the background or user interface, something that is not really interacting with the card, we want that the card goes back to where it was before. So to do this, we need to go here on our event sheet and create a new condition. So we go on the card and we do on drag and drop condition. Here we have 4 conditions. Today we just do quickly introduction to drag and drop. It's not very complicated anyway. It's just drag. If the condition is dragging, is enabled, or start drag or on drop. In this case, on drop. So when the card is on dropped, what we need to check where the card is actually dropped. So we do another condition here, and then we check if the card is overlapping use card. So card overlapping is overlapping another object. Which one? Use card. Yes. In this case, what we're going to do, we can destroy the card directly, but since we want to empty the slot, we need to put another condition to filter the slot. Otherwise, if we destroy the card, we're not able to retrieve the condition of the slot anymore. So we say slot compare instance variable number if the number of the slot is equal to card dot slot. So if they are both with the same number, it means they are paired together. So in that case, slot set value of card equals to -1. Therefore, now the slot becomes free again. And then the card finally can be destroyed. Okay. Then what's happened if the card is not is not dropped on top of the use card, so it's not overlapping? Then we do add and else, and then we say the same condition before. So we can just go here at the top of the line, hold Control, click with the left mouse, drag, copy, and then we remove these 2 conditions, and we do card set position to another object. And which object? Slot. Which slot? The one we just filtered before, as in the previous line, this one. So the card will go back to where it was, and this should work straight away out of the box. Let's see. I'm dragging here on use, card is gone. I'm dragging this outside, and the card is coming back. If I drag it here, it's destroyed. So I think it's working quite fine. So for the last part, I want to be able to take the card from the deck to put in the slot in our hand when we use the card, because at the moment it's not happening. So we go back to our event sheet and add a new event. Before I insert a new object. In this case I will add the mouse. If you prefer to use the touch, use the touch, same thing. Doesn't really change for this tutorial. So the condition is a mouse, and I wonder when we double click on the deck, we can get the card. So on click, left, double click. I put double click to avoid that by mistake we click once. Just I put this up here so I can keep all the function together, aside for this one that is not a function. And as I said before, if you use a full version of Construct 2, of course you can organize well all your code, use groups or whatever you want to use. If you're the free version, unfortunately we need to compact everything as much as possible. Like for example, all of these could be, as I was explaining before, inside in this way, and it will work as well. And you say 1, 2, 3, 4 line, but it's not so clear for me. Also it's very bulky, so if I want, I close all, but still I don't see much space saved on my screen, or I leave it in this way, and then when I close I can save space on the screen. So that's why, another reason why I'm doing this. So anyway, let's continue here. Sorry, I forgot to say that I need to double click on object click. On left, double click on the deck, otherwise it's just a generic double click. And there are two conditions here. So if I double click on the deck and I have a card slot, compare instance variable, if the card has a slot equal to 0, then we do we call pick card. I'm going to explain this in 1 minute. And here we do else, otherwise we create deck. So what's happening then? When I use the double click on the deck, if we have one card that is slot equals 0, that means that there is at least one card in the deck. Then call the function pick card. Okay, it's going to do pick card only once. Okay, it does only once because here there is a no loop like we have in full end. Otherwise, if we don't have any card in the slot because the deck is finished, we create a new deck from zero, from scratch. We have a coming from nowhere, and then we call create deck. And when we call create deck, then we loop and spawn all the cards. So let's just save and try. So now we have our cards. I just play this card, this is free. I double click and then I got a new card as before. Just now it's working only for this single slot and it's not going to fill all the empty slots. So if I play more than one card and I make a double click, first is fill the closest one to the deck, then again this becomes the closest, is filled, and then this the last one is filled. So when I use the last card, I double click, I put the card here, and then if I double click again, I get back my deck. Now, of course, depending on the game, this is a different situation. So you might have back the card on the deck that have been used. So like cards that you put aside of the game, they can come back. You can select only specific card. Now this goes outside the goal of this tutorial. This tutorial was just here to show how you can recreate a card using the functions. So I hope everything's clear. I think this was a good introduction to the functions. As you can see, we've done a lot of calling of functions. So we only 1, 2, 3 functions here, but if I had to rewrite code without calling the function, I will have to write so many times the same code over and over, because every of this condition is repeated, and then it's quite a lot of wasting time. In addition to be not a optimum situation, it's already big waste of time and space. And therefore, still going back again, and sorry if I insist, if you have a free version of Construct, this as well save a lot of line, also save your limitation. The function can do much more than this. This is just the really basic thing, but as you can see, it's really a big advantage compared to don't use the functions. So that's it for now for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you do, please click like. It costs nothing for you. For me, it's very big help, not only to prove that what I'm doing is approved by you, but also to let me stay up on YouTube. At the same time, if you are not subscribed, please subscribe so you can see many new videos I'm doing. I'm trying to do a little bit of different things. Let me know what's your favorite kind of video I'm doing, so I can try to push myself more in that direction. If you want to be notified about what's happening next, click on the notification bell and you will receive an email every time I upload a new video. Finally, share this video amongst other students like you that want to learn more about developing games with Construct, and that will be useful not only for you but also for other friends that you can work together maybe in some games later on. I think that's it for today. In the next video I will do a generic introduction about what's an array in 1, 2 or 3 dimension. After that we'll see how the array works in our code. The first video will be just a theory, so for you that doesn't know about array, I suggest you to see that video. If you know already, you can skip and see the following video. So in the third video of this series, we will have this video talking about the array, how to insert the information on the array, remove, and so on. So how to manipulate the array. Then later on, we'll see how to shuffle the card and other stuff. So I'm not going to spoil too much, because this video already quite long. I think it's about 1 hour I'm talking. So I'll see you next time, and thank you for being with me until now. See you later. Bye bye.